I am Nicole Federer, and I am the EAA Events Coordinator. And I want to thank all of you guys for coming tonight. When we had to make the very difficult decision to postpone the summer conference this year, it put us in a very interesting position. We knew that it was important to provide a platform that would allow our members to connect. And we also knew that this year was probably one of the most challenging, which we just showed you in this crazy GoToMeeting situation that you probably have ever had. And now more than ever, our members need each other and we need each other as a community. And so the board set out to put together several offerings of inspiring content to reach out to all of our members. We have Samantha VJ presenting on Tuesday. We have Gina Applegate presenting a mini workshop on the ukulele, and Christina Carroll presenting a timeline on education, also in July. So look for more detailed descriptions on these events coming soon on EAA Talk and our website. We also have nearly 120 members from around the globe who are taking advantage of the culturally responsible Montessori environment. So give yourselves a round of applause for that one. Also make sure to check out EAA Talk for fall planning support. Our outreach coordinator, Regina, man, I worked on this last name all afternoon. Sokowski will pose a question every Monday morning. Thank you guys again for joining EAA. We are a grassroots organization that is member funded, and we're here to support our members. That's our #1 goal. We're here to support other Montessori elementary teachers in whatever capacity or way that you guys tell us. And we're really open to that. We listen to you guys. So if you have a topic that you're passionate about, or you want your voice heard, send us a proposal or write something for the newsletter, because your voice is important to us, because we wouldn't without you. So thank you again for joining us tonight. A couple of just quick, you don't have to have your camera on, you don't have to, definitely make sure your mic is off. If you do have any questions, you can go ahead and post them in the chat box, and either Rochelle or myself will feed them to Joseph throughout the presentation or at the end of the presentation. So tonight our speaker is Joseph Aiken. I first met Joseph at the EAA Summer Conference in the Grand Tetons over a decade ago. He has been an AMI elementary guide and administrator for over 16 years. He is a reoccurring guest speaker at the French Training Center and is the elementary director of Post Oak School in Houston, Texas. Joseph has presented at previous summer conferences with Donna Bryant-Gertz on the self-managing community, and we thought that would be a perfect topic or an idea of a topic for this uncertain time. So ladies and gentlemen, Joseph Aiken.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for that introduction. And I'm so glad to be here with all of our colleagues. As Nicole said, this is a portion of a presentation that Donna Bryant-Gertz and I collaborated and developed together over the self-managing community, which is a way to be able to support communities of children in the second plane, 6 to 9, 9 to 12, or 6 to 12. This is quite a truncated version of what we usually present. Nonetheless, I'm happy to be in this dialogue and so excited that over the course of this summer, other presenters such as Samantha VJ and Gina Applegate will be able to engage us. I believe we have arrangements so at the end of summer, I might be able to return back so that we can continue the dialogue that we begin today. So, just enjoying here a picture of a flower, some botany. Oh, let's get it. So the first aim of the prepared environment is, as far as it is possible, to render the growing child independent of the adult. And I want to make a plug. I think that it's extremely exciting and beneficial for us all just to be able to record and to be able to exchange with one another, with our colleagues, inspirational quotations that we find from Montessori, or from other speakers, other writers throughout human history. This is it. This is our prepared environment, our little blue planet, our planet Earth. And so this is our macro view. And from all over the lithosphere, from our variety of countries, states, counties, nations, we've gathered together here today in support and in discussion of supporting the child, specifically the child of the second plane. Now, a Montessori elementary child begins or belongs to a cosmic community, one that provides the firm ground, the secure space, and the open-ended time and the supportive relationships to explore great questions. The questions that define us and that make us who we are, that give our lives meaning. And in the course of exploring these questions, who am I? Where did I come from? What am I here for? And discovering some of those answers, we are able to collaborate and to help one another to think more clearly, to read more fully and comprehensively, to write beautifully or gracefully, and to be able to operate within the world of numbers. And we're able to explore the universe and our Earth and express ourselves creatively. Now, it's been a while since I've been able to be around children, especially within the prepared environments that all of us have done. And I believe that we all know how important it is to create and support an environment that the children can love. Because it's the love of the environment that inspires the children to study and to learn how to love how to learn. So quickly, I'll just walk you through a course of a day, and we can just kind of take in the children that we work with and that we prepare ourselves and our environments for. In my environment, the children walk down the path, they would come into the room, they would take care of their lunch boxes, set them onto the shelf, and then they would come in to greet me. And that's how I always like to begin each day, was with a greeting. And to be able to let them know how good it was to be able to see them. Afterwards, the children would choose a series of different ways to be able to help prepare the environment for our workday. When the children came into the room, of course, all of these different lunch boxes on the lunchbox shelf were not there. So each one started to fill up row by row. The chairs were on top of the tables. The lamps were out or turned off. There were different jobs that could be done. And so I would be able to greet the children, and immediately then we would ask, how would you like to be able to prepare the environment? And this is just a way that we start to explore belonging to this cosmic community and being able to figure out how we can help fulfill our own needs while supporting the needs of the other individuals of our community as a whole and in their different parts. So children would help take down sections of chairs. They would unload the top rack of the dishwasher, maybe the bottom rack of the dishwasher, the silverware. They may mark the calendar for the day that we were living with a bold red line. They would fill bird baths. There was a variety of ways that over time, the children and I developed together for different ways that we could help prepare our environment for this workday that we were going to live together. And after all that was done, we then settled in to our work period. Children would be receiving new presentations with me. They would be continuing with existing work or projects that they had started with one another. As you can see in this picture that's showing a fraction of the room, they were working on table surfaces, on floor surfaces. And we would start to get into that rhythm of the day. the life of our community, of our working community, because we all had something to do, which was our variety of different works. I would be giving presentations, and as we can all remember, sometimes you plan for a presentation for just 2 people, which is how this started here. I was giving a presentation to 2 young girls, and you never know when interest is going to strike, and all of a sudden you have many other children who want to be able to join you. And here too, it's evident that you know, there's different stages to our Montessori life. There is our stage as in training. We're receiving all of our albums, which I have sitting next to me even today, and that I perused in preparation for this. But then there's also our Montessori life that takes place when the children come into the room and we start to practice these presentations with them. And we realize that there's a lot of elements that we may not have initially been prepared for due to the highly respectful nature of the adults who in our training were such very, very acquiescent children. And so there arises a lot of different opportunities to be able to work with grace and courtesy, or spacing, considering spacing, safety, and respect. And so our custom within the room was, whenever we were doing science experiments, if it was myself or any other child or group of children, that we were to be 2 square feet away. And it just so happened that the floors in this particular classroom were square foot tiles, which made it very easy visually to be able to know what that safe distance was so that you could be an observer. And there was the rule also within our room that anybody was welcome, or within our community, anybody was welcome to be able to observe a presentation. So while I'm presenting over here in this portion of the room, children may be working outside. Here's a child who's sweeping the outside patio, something that may have been for him a need for movement or more active activity, but it was also an action that contributed to the well-being and to the environment of his community. And so we're always looking for practical, true ways to be able to meet the needs of individuals and also the needs of the community. During the morning work periods, this is also when children were presenting to one another. And here as well is an opportunity for the children to be able to be as a community, to be together, to be able to be an audience, to be able to take in information, to be able to comment on that information. Not to mention all the different steps that go into the presenters preparing over a period of time to be able to give information to their peers. And although here this is the formal presentation, these two children had been presenting probably over the course of the entire week, out and amongst all of us getting ready for this. And I always think that that's what's so exciting as well about working within Montessori environments, is that just moving across the room, you're able to take in all of these different activities and interests from the cosmic curriculum that are being presented. Children are working and continuing their large projects. And each one of these, the children were able to pass on over a period of time how to be able to carry this out. I know that I initially showed a group of children how to be able to connect smaller pieces of paper together so that you could have a larger surface. I certainly showed them where the underlays were so they could do this. And then after that, they just showed one another how to take on and how to make these really large, elaborate paintings and works or graphs or charts. This one was over a crane, I believe, or that's probably an eagle, actually, judging from the beak. So this is all happening during the work period. Again, lessons are being presented to small groups. Sometimes they grow larger with interests. I was always trying to make sure that I was presenting from all the different subject areas throughout the course of the day. Presenting inside, presenting outside. Here I'm working with a group of children. We're observing some monarch caterpillars that were devouring the leaves of our milkweed. This was a way that I was always looking for and seeking out opportunities for the children to write throughout the course of the day. And then I was also trying to connect them with their follow-up. And almost every single presentation that I recorded in my albums from training with Alan Travis and Phyllis Potash Lewis, it says afterwards that you want to be able to connect them with the environment so that they can be able to explore. So I was always trying to show the children how they could prepare themselves with their clipboards or their work or with their posturing so that they could be trusted to move outside. And part of that certainly was initiated by me showing them that there was the possibility for them to be able to move outside, to be able to collaborate. And it just started easily where we were just writing about counting how many caterpillars did we see, what was their length, what was their movement. Now that was the end of a 3-hour work period. And then this is our transition into lunch. This is another picture that's just showing the way that each member of the community is able to play their own role in helping. And this happens to be one of the youngest members of our community who wanted to be able to give the signal that it was time to transition from the morning work period into lunch. And so our kind of agreement within the room was that if that was something that you wanted to take on, there were some other tasks that need to be taken care of in advance. So before you rang the bell, just signaling that it was time to put away your work and get ready for lunch, a child would take out the placemats, which you see her doing here. They would bring out the napkins, and sometimes this could certainly be a collaborative work, but we were always looking for ways for the children to be tied into ownership of their schedule and of their days and their interactions with one another. So you see that she bought out silverware and placemats. And then the children began to set up their table groups so that they could enjoy their lunch with one another. And that too was a way to be able to foster communication, to be able to model grace and courtesy or proper manners. This was a time that me and my assistant, often we would eat together, but then we would also rotate around the room because there are times where there are certain children who need to be able to have that one-on-one conversation or are so excited to be able to tell you about something that they've done. And I found that this was a way that I was able to bring in that one-on-one connection. Lunch would occur and then we would go outside. And again, I'm just trying to walk you through the day so that we can remember what it was like when we were in these classrooms. We go outside to be able to take in some fresh air activities. Sometimes we would play before lunch, sometimes it was after. We would return to the room, and we're over time, I was able to, I think initially when I was leading a community, I was always giving the signal for children to be able to move onto this patio so that they could come back into the room, just so that there wasn't so much congestion or kind of bottlenecking. But over time, together with the community, we were able to collaborate and figure out how can we make this go smoother. Different children had their different ideas, and of course, that's always an opportunity for us to be able to model listening and acknowledging one another. And we came up with this idea, which was a child would stand here at the storm drain on this rock, which was just a visual aid that somebody happened to notice, and they would stand there, and he's giving signals with his left hand, showing that one child from the left-hand bench can come on in. And so that was one way that we were able to turn over another transition or another aspect of this cosmic community over to the children so that they could have ownership in it. And this is the way that it was able to become a living, breathing room. The children would see the signals, and then they would stand up and come down, either walking down the granite path, or there was a little shortcut that they could take. just because who doesn't enjoy to hop across stones and take a shortcut? And then we would enter back into our work period. And so always within our community, this is when we're honing skills, we're learning new ones, like we said before. As I give new presentations both outside and in, we are inspired, our souls are thrilled, our imaginations are struck with the great lessons, with all the follow-up and with all the stories. And we are motivated to pursue all of our different interests deeply. And we're driven to dig down deeply, deep down for the effort to do that which we are less inclined to do, what might be daunting for us. And anytime we do this, we are supported, and then we also give support in return whenever it is needed. Here's children working outside as well on planting. I may call on you all often. I don't have images of our timeline of life, of the human timelines 1 and 2, or of our many other visual aids, but I know that each of us have experience with them and can draw them to mind. I do love the stories that they have about botany and all the different stories, as in to educate the human potential, by Maria Montessori, where they're talking about providing consciousness, or this idea of we know that human beings have a consciousness, but what would it be like if plants were conscious of their activities? That's when we have those charts of the plant being the exultant sun worshiper. But this also starts to become something that I was talking about with the children in their lessons, is just an object of interest, or a jocular way of like interacting. And we would talk about raking the earth's hair if we were raking the grass, or we would talk about the exultant sun worshiping, or I wonder what this plant would say. Certainly in digging too, it gave us lots of opportunities to be able to uncover insects, worms, and it was gave us lots of fodder to be able to pepper conversations with awareness for the different cosmic tasks of other creatures, such as the earthworm, burrowing through our lithosphere or through the humus of the soil, with this unending hunger for the dirt. And as it passes through, it's relieving of itself all of this excrement, which usually sometimes when we hear the word excrement as humans, it could be a little repulsive. But for this worm in particular, it provides all that rich material for all the plant life to be able to grow. I think I'm saying this just because whenever I gave the presentations, the great lessons, or any other presentation from plant life to geometry materials such as the polygons, or to our introduction of the concepts of angles, for me that just became part of the classroom lexicon, and it became reference material for us to often refer back to. As with animals, we would always wonder, I wonder if this is an invertebrate or an vertebrate or an invertebrate. I wonder about its type of movement, but we are always coming up with lots of wonder and then tying it back to that reference material that we have within our environments. Then when the children, as they often were inspired to be able to do their own projects or to do their own works, I also use that material that each of us has made as kind of templates, not for them to copy, but for them to be able to look at. In these nomenclature booklets, it tends to be that they've got an image, and then they've also got some text. Isn't that interesting how they've paired together both an image and text? And that just laid the ground for the children. Now, of course, we've got quite the blessing of being able to work with children over a 3 or 6 year range. So they're able to hear and pick up on this way of speaking, on this common lexicon, and this way of being able to approach both work and one another. And for them, it just becomes normal. Children are working outside, and all the time, the children are communicating. I enjoy this picture so much just because they happen to be digging and working together, but they're wearing their gloves, which just emphasize their hands so much. I can almost feel the energy that he's using as he's talking and puzzling this out. But that's certainly something that that is the social curriculum. Curriculum is the children talking, being with one another, exchanging their ideas. And it's something as Montessorians and as guides within our rooms that we're ready to be able to help support, to be able to refine the communication skills that the children may have. Because although this is we know that they're socially gregarious, they have come into this with an extremely raw power. And what I think the entire period of childhood 6 to 12 is just all of these different opportunities that the children have, where we're able to kind of smooth away the rough edges of that raw stone of sociability, and to start to become smoother and smoother in our interactions. What we have as adults have is our intelligence doesn't trump that of the children. I think that they beat us in spades, but what we do have is experience, and we're able to let them know how, in some situations, the way that they're speaking or treating somebody else may not be received kindly, appropriately. And so then there's all these opportunities, but that is what childhood is about, is being able to smooth that out and get so many different experiences practicing. This is just a chart that we had just to be able to keep really rich language going. I would reference this for myself, but in that dialogue of supporting children in their interactions with one another, I was trying to move away from just always saying sad or angry or mad, reducing it to such a small sampling of human emotions, whereas really the feelings that we each express can be so varied and layered. So I tried to use these different words: exasperated or exhausted, indifferent, hopeful, helpless, resentful, triumphant. For children who are able to read, they were able to read those. Sometimes you just pointed. So this can be used as a classroom material just to be able to help enrich the vocabulary, and also being able to name an emotion, because we do know that when you're able to name something, you're able to diminish, well, you're able to claim some ownership over that. It's a little less daunting. So this was helpful, and it did help me just be able to bring in continued rich vocabulary into the room regarding social and emotional elements. Also, too, once you're able to name something, or the child was able to name or to signify it for themselves, there was usually quite a display of like relief, just because they felt acknowledged or seen. Continuing with this trend of communication, that's what us as adults and as the children are always modeling. How we provide space, how we're able to communicate clearly. Here you can see examples as well of a variety of children. I'm not sure how this one happened today. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 different groups or more over in this area. But it becomes necessary to also be able to understand. Yes, you may be interested in playing. Yeah, a lot of this is games, but playing the game or using the material, the wooden hierarchical material. But there are also other children using this space. So how can we set this up so that you can be successful, so that you can access your materials, and so that other children can still move around? And also, while we're playing this this game of kind of, it really is hide and seek, isn't it? Where you take the unit or the 10 bar and you place it around the room as you're carrying out that three-part lesson with the children. It's hide and seek, but you know, you want to put forward some stipulations so it can be successful. In which case, I always had the children, as they placed it around the room, it had to be visible to the eye. So in that way, it helped to diminish that unit cube or the 10 bar getting placed behind a shelf or behind books or just disappearing. But we're always trying to look at ways to be able to set up the children so that they can be successful in carrying out this work. How can they be successful, and also partner that with the joy and the collaboration that they have with one another. Again, another presentation inside. Sometimes it was with small groups, sometimes it's large group collaboration. And so also it takes a lot of awareness on the children's part whenever you get into these large projects that sometimes just bloom of their own volition. This happened after I showed an element of collage connected with exploration of succulent fruits. So here you can see a lemon and a tomato. And all of a sudden it became quite a big project. But they were all sharing the space. They were working on floors, on tables, in different parts of the room. Or no, this wasn't in different parts of the room, just at this table, and still were able to maintain it so that they could carry this out successfully, that they could be around one another in a large group and partnership. And really, this is what feels so wonderful over the development of a community, is how you can get to a point where you as the adult are not involved in this, but the children have awareness of one another and of themselves and are able to help one another participate in this big work. This was another example too of the children would often create materials using the material presentations in the presentations as a catalyst or as inspiration. So I had children who developed materials that were on the shelf for categorizing or for the nomenclature of seashells, of univalves and bivalves, of different types of fruit. And so then I was able to show them how to use construction paper and sew together an envelope, make labels, or to be able to do whatever they wanted to. We also did this extension as well for word problems, where the children could, we had a basket that held different word problems that children had created, solved, and had out on the shelf. And then here's just putting things away. The day I always wanted to focus on having really nice, one of my mentors, Patricia O'Reedy, always spoke about having bookends to your day. You really wanted to think through the process for arrival and then also departure, so that you can have these positive beginnings and endings for the day. And this is just showing the end of the day, how children left out their work so that they were ready to be invited back for it the next day. Our custom was to always put away work. The exception was you could leave it out if you were committed to coming back to it in the morning and continuing with that work, or if by putting it away, it would somehow interrupt the ability to complete the task, like the checkerboard. If you're in the middle of a multi-digit problem and you've only been able to carry out 2 of the multipliers, then for that 3rd and 4th multiplier, you may certainly leave that out through lunch or overnight so that we could return to it to solve it, if that was what you wanted to do. Okay, so there's no reason to be able to see all the different details, but these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages that are kind of just detailing the flow and the activities of our day as based within this basic schedule. The schedule of a day for a child when we were in the classroom was arrival, then a 3-hour work period. We had lunch, and then we returned in the afternoon for 1.5 to 3-hour work cycle, and then we departed. And I think it's always amazing to think about all the discussions, all the life, all the interactions, all the interests and explorations that come about just during this, what's broken down here into 5 rectangles, 5 blocks of time. Now, when the child comes into the elementary, it can even seem like it's a big party for them. They may not necessarily initially be able to identify or to be able to see the level and the layers of work that exist. Let's see. The work is more collaborative and the interactions are far more lively. Even the volume of the room has a hum and a buzz that was not there before in Children's House. The children are excited and their exchanges are far more complex. And the children, we know this is part of the social part, they discuss and they dispute among one another vigorously. And this is to be expected, embraced, and encouraged. The children's imagination is now even more complexly constructed and more creative, whereas before in the Children's House, it was reproductive and more simply constructive. It's not immediately apparent to the children when they come into the room that the same manners and civility that they would extend to one another in Children's House still exists here in terms of respect and safety. The elementary community could look to a child like a big party or group hanging out. They may not yet recognize the work ethic. But nonetheless, our environment provides the spirit and the fodder for them to be able to collaborate and to be able to follow through in their interests using the work of their hands and their mind to be able to develop. Here's a quote from Maria Montessori: "The life of the spirit prepares the dynamic power for daily life, and on its side, daily life encourages thought by means of just ordinary work." And I do believe that there's a great, I don't know, palliative healing, but there's a great healing or soothing that occurs from this rhythm and the expectation that this is the way that their day is going to unfold. Through these uninterrupted work cycles, through this work, it also allows the guides to be able to support and to be able to give guidance and support to the children whenever that may arise. Because then there's our material presentations we give, there's the stories, there's the discussions, but then there's also those presentations that only the adult can give, which is modeling respect and safety for each member of the community. Now, the teacher's task is not to talk, but to prepare and arrange a series of motives for cultural activity in a special environment that is made for the child. And now I just want to look at one day two as we just think about the way that as a community or groups of children master the different customs of a room, they're able to begin to consider ways to help make more specific circumstances run more smoothly. The guide is able to brainstorm solutions to these situations with the children. And at times, these problematic moments will be general. How could we improve crowding in an area? Whereas other times, they might be more specific to a new level of civility and manners. Now, this next series of slides is a day, a Thanksgiving celebration that was experienced with this community and children and myself. And I was always trying to monitor and protect the flow of the day, the week, the season. But this was one way that we were able to incorporate as a community Thanksgiving. It started off as any other where we just were giving presentations. Here I am giving one about the Great Civilization, the body. I can tell that this is Thanksgiving because of the pumpkin that's out on the shelf in the lower left-hand corner. But prior to this, children had also decided that they wanted to make some applesauce, so they had a going out. They had looked at the cost of apples. They'd done an estimate using the checkerboard and the decimal checkerboard to get a rough estimate, and then they went out to purchase some apples. And here you can see that they've gathered all their different materials. Their trays for a, well, I can't remember what you call that press. Tool on the left-hand side. It does have a specific name. And then over the course of the morning, while everybody was doing their different work, there were children who were, some children cut the apples. They assembled all the ingredients into the stovetop pot, and then they took turns monitoring and stirring. So here you can see two children. After the apples had been cooked or reduced or stewed, next, oh, here's that tool again. My mind is just blanking. Food press, food mill maybe. This was just giving a short presentation to a group of children who were interested in helping at this point in time, just how to be able to spoon the apple into the food mill and just to be able to puree the apples. They took on in the information, and then I allowed them just to be able to take their turn. This was allowed over the course of the morning, so nobody had to be worried or concerned that if they had a desire to participate, that they wouldn't be able to participate in some way. At the same time, other children are doing their writings or doing their works. Drawing a still life here of pumpkin or gourds. And while this is all going on, the children are pureeing. Now also at the same time, here are two boys, two full cycle children, so around the ages of 8 or 9, who are using the equivalence material to be able to figure out what should be our table arrangement for our whole community when we come together. And so you can see that they've brought out, it looks like the 16ths and also the 8ths. And they've ascribed an 8th rectangle to being a 2-top, and they've given a 16th to a 1-top. And you can see in the lower left-hand side of the screen, their different drawings, and they came up with a series of different designs, trying to puzzle out based upon the attendance that we had that day, where people would sit. But there are always these opportunities within a community to be able to fold in the children so that they can have ownership, participation, and enjoying the success of this community endeavor. All while this is going on, children are still having a chance to puree the apples, and I can see a young boy and his partner working with the racks and tubes beyond. And then here we are getting ready for lunch. Again, we were able to divide up the labor so that some children helped move tables, some helped place, some brought out name tags, and the children are setting up so that we can have this large meal together on this day, of which the applesauce was served by a few children afterwards for anybody who wanted to participate or have some to amend their lunch. And so that was a day. So let's see, how can I do this? So I think that, let's see, we humans are compassionate and caring by nature. We express our compassion and care by graciously and courteously developing civility and designing manners. Our good manners are the way that we can show others that we care about them. I like that. I heard that from my mentor, Donna Bryant-Gertz, and that's something that I've always kept in mind, that manners are a way that we can kind of lubricate just our social interactions and be able to smooth out the bumps that we kind of traverse in our day-to-day lives. And so I'm always looking for opportunities with the children to be able to model or to show these ways that we care for one another. That we care for one another, that we care for plants, that we care for animals, that we care for our environment. And so, let's see. Nicole, I'm going to check in with you on time. I know we wanted to leave 10 minutes or so for any questions. Okay.
You can keep going.
Oh, I can. Thank you so much. Now, what's interesting for me too is if we can think about, the chart that we have showing the realm of nature, the natura, the realm of the supernatura that humans have created through our work of hands, because that is what humans are, the great creators. And we've created upon the natural world to be able to create this supernatura. Well, the universe is gracious and courteous from that macrosphere to the microsphere. And there's a geological intelligence there's a biological intelligence, and there's an unconscious tendency towards grace and courtesy. And if you think about that chart between the supernatura above and the natura below, humans are in that in-between realm. And we have a conscious intelligence in addition to that biological intelligence and to our instincts. We are directed from within by our human tendencies, and we're driven by the sensitive periods. We're consciously and intentionally creating supernatura that respects and supports life on Earth and a society, a human society that is both compassionate and collaborative. But all of this is subject to the physical, procedural, social, and emotional environments that we provide for one another and for our children. And I think that that's what's so incredible, that we have the opportunity to participate in the children living day to day within an environment, within a community that has these values. Now, as I said, today is just a portion. Almost each one of these different topics that I've hit upon has its own presentation kind of connected with it. But that is what I have prepared for you within this time that we have today. So now I can take any questions that may or may not exist. And I love to do some ad hoc. So
I think we have a intimate enough group where if people really wanted to ask questions, I bet that they could unmute themselves and ask those questions. So if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself. Or if you are a little shy, you can just type it in the chat.
Or if it just takes you a little bit of time to warm up, then
Joseph, I have a question. My name is Monica. I just finished my elementary training and I'll be starting a new classroom in fall.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Wanted to ask how did you organize the work folders for children? How do they collect? Is it a binder, finished work, unfinished work? How do you separate them? Does it go home on how often? I mean, all those questions about the children's work. I don't know if it makes sense, but
I want you to know that that makes a lot of sense.
okay.
Yes, I think that that is an extremely normal question to concern and to be thinking about as you get ready for your first year. I can supply my way, but just so you know that there's so many people who have come up with different systems that work for them, and it's really varied. And that's what's so wonderful about EAA as a group, is it gives you this opportunity to be able to dialogue. I'm just gonna. It's going to seem like I transgressed, but I swear to you that I heard your conversation and your question, and I'm going to answer it. But it was at the different conferences and through EAA that I figured out care of the environment through talking with colleagues and exchanging different rituals and procedures with them, all sorts of things. So really, this is a rich group that can contribute from that. Now, in regard to work, the way that I was able to puzzle it out for myself within I think I was able to keep these ideas across the three different communities, three different communities that I worked within, the children are prolific producers of work. And so what I did was I separated number-based work into one folder. So that was geometry or anything involving numbers, even if it was written word problems, went into one folder, which was a hanging file folder. I had different types of systems just so the children could work with different types of organization and classification. But I had like a hanging file folder that could go into a rack that held all of their number-based work. And then I had another type of folding folder like this. That held their written-based work. And then inside that folder, there were a series, I think it was like a 6-pocket folder or something like that. And they were able to organize their written work. So poetry, prose in there. And then I had these large oversized folders for oversized work, because that's something you definitely want to take care of or take into accord as you prepare your environment. because the children are going to make really large work. So I had portfolios that I broke into, I had communities of about 32 to 33, 28 to like 33 children. And I would, each folder had 4 children's names on it. So then they would help keep it into order with one another. And then that way it didn't get overwhelming. Really what I did was, the reason that I reduced that into numbers, word-based work, and to oversized work, was just so that it wasn't overwhelming to the children, because you'll find out very quickly with what they're able to produce. It can be overwhelming to you as an adult, and it's just simply not fair to be able to saddle a child with that. So then I was just trying to find out ways to be able to lead them to be able to successfully care for and organize their work. And I've got an entire presentation over the prepared environment and all of those different details. So you're welcome to be able to contact me. My name is it's Joseph Aiken at postoakschool.org. If you and I'd be willing to share some ideas for the physical environment, if you're inclined.
Thank you. That helps. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Joseph, I typed in a question and then realized that you can't see the chat while you're presenting.
Okay.
So I'm really interested in thinking more about that idea of vocabulary for feelings, and wondering if at Austin Montessori that work is starting in the CASA. Is that, the helping children have words for their language, and then second, kind of, were these group conversations that you were having about the kinds of feelings we might be having, or was it really targeted only to those kids who were experiencing challenges and naming what they were going through?
Really good question, Michelle. Okay, so for, in my experience when I was at Austin Montessori School, yes, there was a high level of intentionality directed towards language used by adults in modeling, especially at the younger ages, and all throughout the entire school. And I think that that's something that I found to be true to, about Montessorians in general, is our desire to be able to discuss language and meanings of words. So yes, there was a firm base that we're always standing upon as elementary guides, and that's the work that's done either in the youngest children's community and then also the children's house. So, now, as for elementary, those conversations would take place in small groups, in large groups. They were peppered throughout. Literature and stories is a really good way to be able to approach that as well, where you start to kind of hypothesize or wonder how something might be feeling, if something is unsettling, to be able to address that. I definitely recommend Donna's book, Children Who Are Not Yet Peaceful. It has lots of different anecdotes about children being able to support one another through that. So how it worked initially with the language was, anytime that there was kind of a heated, not sometimes it wasn't even heated, but if there could have been like a heated dispute, I would always move towards the children and just kind of say, wow, this kind of feels like it's getting a little heated, and then we would just take a seat. And then we would able to go through talking about one another's different experiences, because whenever you have an interaction like that, it's always going to be 2 or more people that have their own perspective, and so then you want to be able to acknowledge both of those different perspectives. And then what you start to model too is just how the job of the audience, or the people who are not speaking, is to be able to listen and to not interrupt. And the speaker may speak as long and passionately as they like, as long as it's as long as they don't repeat themselves, and it's not not disrespectful. And so then you give everybody a chance to be able to share their experiences. Initially, as the adult is modeling this, you may kind of give like a little recap or synopsis, or I heard this, is that on the mark or is that off the mark? And the wonderful thing about children is that they will let you know, no, that wasn't how I was feeling. And then that's one of those times when you're kind of doing that recap that you can say, oh, that must have been alarming, or that might have felt surprising or shameful, or any of that. And you can have that kind of like a feelings emoticon chart at that point in time to be able to use it. Does that begin to answer your question, Michelle? Okay, great, thank you.
Hey, Joseph, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Garth.
Perfect. Thank you for the presentation. It was a nice reminder of what we've been missing for the past few months.
Ah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I've probably asked this question about 20 times, and I've gotten 20 answers in one way or another. I guess one of the things I always wonder about is how to connect children to materials, or I don't want to say materials. How do you get children to feel excited about some of, I hate using the word materials, but essentially that, you know, if you have a group of children that if you didn't give them any guidance, they would sit and read, you know, comics or chapter books all day and they wouldn't do anything else. Like, how do you get them excited about, I like I said, I've asked many different people before. I'd just love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah. Well, for me, myself, I'm always just looking for different materials or different windows that are going to spark interest with the children. Also, what happens regarding the materials is, for me, you may have your initial presentation, which is the introduction of a material to a child or to a group of children. But then after that initial presentation, it doesn't stop. And that's where, you know, you can rely on me that we're going to bring this material out again and again. So after presenting it, even a day or two later, I may say, oh yeah, I remember I gave this this presentation of this material to you and to Nicole and to Rochelle. But I don't think that we're going to have a chance to work with Garth with this yet. So it's like, hey, Nicole and Rochelle, let's go get that material and let's practice this with Garth. And then, I mean, I'm light and I'm playful with that, but I'm also pretty relentless. It's like, yep, we're going to do that. But that's the way that you're able to bring together different groups of children over and over again so that they are able to start to practice and to be able to work with that, especially to the point where they're feeling successful enough. And I'm always asking them as we go through too, it's like, what we're looking for is with the materials, there's an incredible depth to the Montessori materials. And there's many, many different levels to it. There's, of course, introductory, you know, presentation, but then we've got all these different other layers to it. So I'll let children know when this starts to feel really smooth to you, that's a signal that your mind is no longer having to put forth the effort that it needed to. It's smooth, you've got this. When that happens, come and let me know, because you're ready for the next level. And so then I have that as well as part of just the ongoing dialogue or this kind of lexicon that I was talking about to be able to help continue the children. So, you know, they'll ask one another, it's like, so do you think that we're getting ready for the next part? And that just comes with practice. And then I think also too, we want to just cultivate within ourselves. You know, we're always talking about how we want to sow seeds of interest for the children, but those seeds also have to be sown within ourselves first, so that we're able to spread them about. And that also comes, I think, for just like an interest and a belief in the materials. And I do fundamentally believe that there's a high level of value, interest in the materials. Even when I worked at when I worked with 9 to 12-year-olds and we were exploring Cube Root, you know, they got to a point where they didn't need to use the Cube Root material. But I would say, you know what, just bring it on out. You can just set it on your table, kind of like a still life, so that you can just kind of like think about it every once in a while. And, you know, I would say, you know, look at this prism here. It's 100,000. But then I try to keep connecting them back with the visual and the abstract appeal of those materials. And that I find interesting. That for me is always like a puzzle, is how do you get them interested, or how do you bring this back, or but I try to switch that lens for myself so that I just think about it as a kind of fun puzzle to be able to figure out how to get this going. And then there's all sorts of different ways too to be able to highlight materials within the room. I know the best success I had for the equivalence material and for the fractions in one room I had them in, I think in the box that Nienhuis used to make that they rested within, or trays. I'm not too sure. Anyways, it was enclosed. But then I decided to put them, I bought some slanted kind of beveled shelves that were at a 45-degree angle so that you could rest all those plates on them, and they were very, very visual. And as soon as they were visually seen by the children, they started to look at them. And then as soon as I see somebody starting to look at something, it's like, looks like you're interesting in what we can do with this. And then we would bring it out.
Perfect. Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure, Garth.
I think we have time for one more question.
I have a question. Hi, Joseph. This is Kimberly Kite Powell. Hi, Nicole. Hi. So I have a question about the idea of creating a class community as we are in our virtual days. Trying to bring everyone together when we have our screens that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about it, but I know that we've all been in it for a while, and we might be back in it again in the fall. So I was just wondering what thoughts you might have.
Yeah, I just think that my thoughts are is that well, I think that we really want to focus on social emotional connections or opportunities for the children to be able to interact with their guide and also with one another. And I think that that's something I'm really trying to puzzle out, is how that can be supported. There was, I think that we're all as adults and certainly as children, I think that we may be kind of maxed out with screen and kind of just passively watching. And we know that real education happens through the child's exploration and the connection between their mind and their hands. And so then I think that in the last 10 weeks, it was we were all just trying to survive and getting tossed around and trying to make do with information that was presented from time to time. And I think that everybody did a great job. You made it. But I think now what I'm really thinking and want to be able to brainstorm, and that's another reason why I think this EAA group is so great, because there's such a countless number of different experiences that people had doing that. But I think one thing we want to really look at, I've heard called asynchronistic learning, which is moving away from the kind of just passive looking at the screen to being able to have more levels of collaboration in small groups and exploration. And I do know that the children just need to be able to look and to talk at one another. So what I was puzzling out with one of my colleagues the other day was how you could have adults present, if it was the guide or the assistant, or just so that they could help monitor children, just being able to exchange jokes or observations or look at one another as humans. I think also we always want to put it in the context of human experience and how, as humans, we like to be able to gaze at one another's eyes. We like to be able to see one another's faces. The kids, notice when one another get, another freckle, and so they can talk about that. I was also trying to think about how I know that in the past, whenever it's been, IRL and in the classroom, I've helped support children with being able to cultivate a varied work partner base. And so, we talk a lot, we often talk about how we want variety of work. And one way that we model that as adults is that we're giving a variety of presentations from all those different curriculum areas. But then I also started to talk with groups of children about, hey, we want to be pretty varied too, and the people that we're able to work and engage with. So, hey, let's see for like this week or maybe 2 weeks, let's kind of just keep track and see how many different people we can like engage with. And so then I was thinking for that one, for this for the social and emotional connection with children via screens, you'd also want to figure out some way so that they were touching bases so that nobody was seemingly left out or not engaged with. So I think that that would want to be a definitely a point that you would want to be able to balance there too, is how you all want to be able to have a chance to be able to check in and kind of like see each person. And then there would be a lot of grace and courtesy regarding the way that materials exchanged. Those are my thoughts right now, but I know that that's something that I think we've all received a lot of anecdotes about and experiences from children in terms of feeling separation, that loss of connection. So.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kimberly. One thing I'd like to ask all of us just to be able to continue to be able to do is within the broader narrative of news, I think that the voice of the child is not being represented. I think that there's a lot of discussion from adults about the impact or the expectations that they want their child to do. But I do think that although we may always, of course, sympathize heavily with that, I think that we just want to advocate too for the voices of the children, for what they're also experiencing right now in the way that our world has just been turned upside down. And I'm glad to be an advocate for children with all of you.